Good morning, everyone. I'm Natalie Morell and I'm from the Notty Project Theatre Company, and I'm really pleased to be hosting GPLD's first live event. And we're asking, is the future rural? So over the next hour, I'm going to be hosting lots of different guests who've had a really big part to play in Great Place Lakes and Dales stories since they began in 2018. So today I'm going to be helping them showcase everything they've achieved over the last 3 years, but we'll also be looking forward to how communities can harness the nation's newfound love for space and creativity and become more sustainable for the future. So we know rural places such as the Lakes and Dales are absolutely amazing places to live. They have lots of space and we can be super creative. But we know that also, even though these are amazing places to live, for young creatives there can be lots of barriers, such as affordability or lack of creative opportunities. And that means that a lot of young people do, unfortunately, leave the area. However, recent national research has highlighted that up to 124,000 extra homes are going to be needed in rural England in the next decade because of the post-COVID demand. There's also been a huge increase in audiences visiting the Lakes and Dales in the national parks. In 2020, there's been 350% increase in 16 to 24-year-olds visiting the national parks compared to 2017, which is huge. So, Great Place Lakes and Dales, or GPLD, have been funded by the National Lottery and Arts Council England to be working on an amazing programme with young people, that's including ourselves at the Notty Project, and they're using art, culture and heritage to address some of these issues. They're shaping places that provide creative work and housing opportunities for young people in the area. So, a few little bits of housekeeping from me. So first of all, just make sure your browser is full screen in your window. That means that you're going to be able to see everything super clearly. And don't worry if your internet is a little bit hazy this morning. Everything is getting recorded, so you'll be able to watch it after the event with transcription if you need it. We'd also love to hear from you and any questions that you'd like to pose during the session. So this is your opportunity to get involved. So we ask you to either open the Slido app or visit slido.com, or you can scan the QR code which is on your screen right now. Slido can be purchased from all your usual app stores. Once you've got it, you just enter the code #GPLDLive, and that's going to allow you to ask lots of questions throughout the session, and I can pose them to our amazing guests. So that is enough of that. We're going to get straight into the session. So first up, it's Lindsay Hebden, and she's GPLD's Programme Manager and responsible for its strategic delivery and planning. Hi, Lindsay.
Hi, Natalie.
How are you?
Not too bad, thank you.
Good stuff. So let's go straight into the questions. So I know that it's been an amazing programme of work over the last 3 years. You've had so many amazing things happen. But what do you think the highlights are, but also the challenges that you faced over the last 3 years?
Well, there are both, Natalie. Indeed, it has been a really busy 3 years, but the good news is there are many, many highlights. I could talk about loads of our projects and events we've piloted, from Watch This Space, Reba, Public Art Now, to The Fold, Ariel, Create Your Future and Hinterlands, lots of wonderful names. The list goes on and on. But actually, the real highlight for me are the many young people involved in Great Place Lakes and Dales, such as you and Simon, and also the many we have met and encountered along the way. Without them, there would be no projects and there would be no programme. There'll always be the Lakes and Dales, but young, passionate, innovative and inspiring creatives are what really makes this place great.
Absolutely.
And personally, it's been incredibly rewarding to discover not only the huge wealth of culture, arts and creative heritage here, but to meet and work with such great young people, including my immediate colleague, Manon, who is so upbeat, committed and really drives the programme forward while supporting and inspiring me every single day. I guess I continue to learn so much from all of our young creatives. Their attitude and tolerance, particularly in these difficult times, I think needs better acknowledgement. We need to continue to support their well-being and nurture their talents, and that means thinking and working differently. So, so I guess, Natalie, that's one of the challenges itself, supporting young people in a way that's meaningful. We've identified and responded to some of these needs, such as spaces for creating, living, working, and simply being, voices that are heard but also represented. And co-working has been a big thing for us, co-working and programming things together. And whilst I know we've provided platforms and mechanisms to help deliver these, the challenge that I'm talking about is to influence and ensure real changes are embraced and realised by everybody, by all stakeholders, not just ourselves. And we know full well this doesn't happen overnight. The time to address and make these changes, though, is now. We realised fairly early on in the programme the need to be patient, which I'm not great at, Natalie, but we did, and nurture young people's creative ideas and their development, because the world is a different place and people are looking at the Lakes and Dales through new glasses, seeing new opportunities for living and working here. And we need to continue to encourage vibrant and intergenerational, that phrase, but that phrase, communities, what I was talking about was, generations working together in those, strong, vibrant communities. Challenges, and yeah, as I say, there's been lots. One that when we started, that was a big one for us, is obviously the geography. It's a vast area, right down from Skipton up to Grasmere. But the major hurdle of this, the travelling, in a way, has ironically been minimised as we adapt and we work digitally and differently. I would obviously love to have been in a beautiful rural space. The sun's shining today, in the lakes or the dales, talking to everybody this morning. But the reality is I'm in my bedroom and, dare I say, in the middle of a city.
That's amazing. And I guess that allows you to access more people and get to know more people and more creatives through this platform that we've kind of all had thrust upon us in the last year.
Absolutely, Natalie. I've met heaps. I mean, that's just been, from a personal perspective, it's been so rewarding. And it goes on and on. You'll meet one person one week, the next. But I've met so many people during the last 12 months and had so many insightful but really engaging conversations. And obviously they've all been digitally, but wonderful as well. But I can't wait to get to see you all and meet you all again in person.
Yeah, I think we're all ready for that, definitely. So I've got to ask you, is the future rural? That's the big question of today.
It is the $1 million question. Yeah, I was thinking about this last night. I really think it could be, Natalie, but I'm choosing my words carefully and saying could rather than is. The opportunity, as we're going to explore this morning, will be explored here. It's here. The opportunity is here. We just need to make it happen. I'm somebody who grew up in the rural Dales in a small village and has spent most of my working life living in the centre of a city, and I now live and work in both. I think the notion of putting elements of the urban in the rural has and rightly continues to be explored. But I think now is the time to put rural lifestyles in the spotlight. I hear so many times references to young people as the next generation and the future. But the fact is, you're all here now. Young people are here now. And so I believe are our rural futures.
That's amazing. Thank you so much, Lindsay, and congratulations on the most amazing programme that's been running for the last 3 years.
And to you all as well. Thank you. Thanks, Natalie.
Thank you. So before we invite our next guest, we've got a short film to share with you, and it's 11 of our young creative champions, and they've captured what makes them creative during lockdown. So here's a short edit.
I see you linger. Are you over there? Do you like a singer? Oh, life, I don't know. Oh, I school with the flow. Then I say again to all my old friends,
Amazing, and I'm sure there's lots that we can all relate to there for sure. So I'm going to move on to our next guest, and I'm really pleased to be joined by Carl Sanderson. He's the Executive Creative Director of Vivid. Hi, Carl.
Hi Natalie, how are you doing?
I'm good, thank you. How are you?
Yeah, very good.
Fab. So let's get straight into the questions, shall we? So you were tasked by GPLD to develop a digital place marketing brand aimed at young people to connect them with the area. So can you tell us all about it?
Yeah, sure. Well, the guys at Great Place Lakes and Dales came to us, and it was all about getting 16 to 34-year-olds to stay in the region. So often now there's more, well, not as much as it used to be. There's the feeling that younger adults need to get away from the rural homes, etc., where they actually live, just to make a name for themselves within the cities, etc. But I
Yeah.
think for us, it was a bit of a gift. Obviously, the Lakes and Dales is an amazing area. You know, just the fabric has inspired so many people through painters, writers, filmmakers, etc. So again, with Lakes and Dales, we coined the "Live More, Do More" hashtag, which really resonated. We had to speak to the audience on their level, so we adopted through the creative champions. We created all TikTok videos, so that
Oh,
really spoke to them and resonated with them. And it was all for us just trying to showcase through testimonials of the skills, the creativity that is inherent in the Lake District and the Yorkshire Dales. So it was a bit of a given. We were very lucky with it, how the ideas just um, flew out for us. And again, we devised an online toolkit. Everything was digitized. You know, we had to speak on their level. We couldn't preach in a different kind of way. So again, the perceptions were quashed. People could see just by their own the TikTok movies, etc., and all the creative collateral that we instigated and created, that there was such a place where people can actually live more and do more. And again, it's spreading the word wider and giving the impetus for the next generation of young adults to actually stay and really make a name for themselves in the area.
yeah, amazing. And I guess it's putting out there that there are so many amazing young creative people living in the Lakes and Dales.
Yeah, to be honest with you, that's part of the job that I really love. I got to meet some amazing people, from paper makers, musicians, artists. There always has been a rich vein of creativity in the north, and especially in the beautiful surroundings of the Yorkshire Dales and the Lake District. But again, when you're meeting them at such a young age, from 16 through to 21, you know, it's almost self-inspiring you as well. You get much more of a kick out of it, and it really drove the passion for the project. It was, yeah, just an eye-opener for me, even though I knew people existed like this here. It was just almost a poke in the eye for the cities, where people do think they need to go to actually further the career or start a business.
Absolutely. That's amazing. So I've got to ask you, do you think that a rural future really can mean living more and doing more, especially in these kind of strange times that we find ourselves in?
Yeah, I think on a personal level, I'm hopefully testament to a success story. I was a farmer's son. I moved down to London when I was 21, and 27 years ago moved back up. You know, kind of before, just as the digital age was kicking in. Now there's so many creative nomads. You don't have to live in a city. There's much more. I live on a beautiful farm. The inspiration is all around me. You do tend to get more time. You're not
Yeah.
rushing. I'm still sat in an office here in Manchester, and after lockdown, you know, after the first wave of COVID, you know, we had to work from home. And I'm kind of like the last person. I wanted that office environment, but we got used to it. I was fine discovering places on my doorstep that I never knew existed. And again,
Yeah.
getting more time to actually be creative. So yeah, now more than ever, I think people will realise that being at home and being inspiring, like there's so many entrepreneurs and cottage industries that have come out from this. So it's a bit of a blessing in disguise. Obviously, it's been tragic in many ways, but I think there's a real sense of creativity and a new heartbeat for the industry and culture within the Lakes and Dales and rural areas. So yeah, I'm all for it. And again, you don't have to pay the extortionate rates for officers. You don't have the commute. You know,
Yeah.
it's just such an eye opener. And I think people in the cities do tend to be more blinkered. I've worked in London, Manchester, Leeds, and Sheffield. And again, it's almost like breaking off the shackles where you do feel like you have to be there. But nowadays, everything's online. We do miss the kind of collaborative approach, but you can still do that within the areas of rural areas.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's looking for those silver linings, isn't it, in the last year? You know, they're definitely there. We've just got to look for them.
Yeah, and I think
Great.
that's yeah.
Oh, thank you so much, Carl. It's been amazing chatting to you. So we're going to move on. So we're going to introduce our next video now. So as part of the programme, GPLD commissioned the Royal Institute of British Architects competition REBA for affordable, flexible housing in both Horton in the Dales National Park and Burneside in South Lakes. And after a huge response from local, national and international architects, apparently this was the second most popular competition for REBA ever, Macmillan Studios and Outpost were the winners. And local sixth form student and budding architect Seth Ben probes Thomas and Andrew about their designs.
Hello, my name is Seth Ben and I'm here with Andrew from Macmillan Studio and Tom from Outpost. Today I'm interviewing them over their winning designs for the Great Place Lakes and Dales RIBA competition for affordable housing in the Great Place Lakes and Dales area. Andrew was the winner for the Horton and Ribblesdale site and Outpost were the winners for the Burneside site. So what was your motivation in entering this competition for affordable housing in rural areas for younger people? And what design approach did you take in designing your winning entries?
Well, obviously it was a fantastic brief and also a fantastic site. The site obviously is kind of on the side of an existing settlement, which is an interesting thing in itself to respond to, but also has this amazing context, the Lakes District. But the brief around how we can bring younger people back to the area and keep them there, I think was really interesting to us, and how we can actually try and move away from the sort of generic UK development typology of effectively boxes that are sort of considered as units and numbers which have a sort of high car priority. And really, I think we're really interested in how you can create genuine communities that bring people together and allow different types of activities to take place, not just, you know, owning a house.
Yeah, I think Tom's absolutely right. We really share a passion for what is a very interesting design brief. And that brief's interesting because it's tackling what is quite an overlooked design area, which is rural areas, where there's a lot of attention on our cities and young people in our cities. But actually, what about rural areas and how we might rejuvenate these communities and give them a new injection of life for generations to come. So the motivation was really to tackle an opportunity that others have been not paying attention to.
So on reflection, is there anything that you would do differently in addressing affordable housing in a rural area for younger people?
I think for our scheme, obviously these competitions are quite short and fast paced, so we have to make some assumptions on things, and I think upon reflection, probably taking the time to actually go and visit the site and the area more often, and to try to get under the skin of the local community. And I think that would have probably tuned are designed more specifically to the local area. But that's something that obviously we can now incorporate into our work going forward.
Yeah, I think similarly, I mean, any project, I mean, particularly, you know, ours with our long houses and sort of courtyards and dense communities, it would be really helpful to, you know, work with the people who might live in it, or at least engage with a sort of wider network of people. But as Andrew says, I think you just make assumptions, and for example, we just invented all sorts of characters who repopulated our house, and that's our houses, and units, work units. So it's really fun, but I think it would have been really interesting to kind of have a consultation thing before and a consultation now, and see how different and what outcome that would have given.
Young people deserve great places to live, and great places to live isn't just about the home that you live in. It's a wider challenge than that. And so what's happened over the last year, particularly for me, particularly for people that are working in my studio, is that we all value our outdoor space more than ever. You know, we're all, you know, with what with climate change and the need to really support biodiversity, it means that we've got these fragile landscapes in rural areas that really require conservation and attention, but they're also valuable as an amenity. So the challenge will be, how do you incorporate affordable housing and great places and landscape to enjoy around where you live in a sustainable and thoughtful way.
Absolutely. And thank you very much, guys, for all your amazing answers. And thank you for watching. And I hope you learned something.
That was absolutely amazing, and well done, Seth, on such a great interview. That was brilliant. So next up, I have got 3 guests, and we'll be discussing rural housing for young people. So I'm really pleased to welcome David from Craven District Council, Mark Cropper from James Cropper and Kendall Futures, and Nathan Cornish from Urban Splash. Hello, everyone.
Hi.
Hi.
Morning.
Great, so we've got loads to get through, so I'm going to just dive straight into it. So I'm going to start off with you, David, if that's all right. So what are the key challenges facing the development of affordable housing in this area?
Big question. I think primarily comes down to costs. I think in rural areas, housing developments tend to be small, therefore they're more bespoke and more expensive to develop. There's a lack of competition between builders that you'd get in a rural area, but also the actual expectations of design standards. So we want them to be indistinguishable from other houses as well. So they've got to be of good design, good quality build, and that adds costs. I think also one of the big issues is about what's called RSLs, the social landlords. It's the cost of actually managing small-scale developments in rural areas is much more expensive than going into an urban area. I think finally, one issue is about landowners and what they call hope value. They always hope that they're going to get more money for market housing, and so they will not allow their housing to come forward.
Thank you so much. That was a great answer. So I'm going to come to Mark next, if that's okay. So what specific tools do landowners and developers need to meet the demand for rural housing to ensure that it is affordable?
Well, I think the most important thing I think we're really lacking in, you know, I'm based in Kendal and around Kendal, and there's a massive issue in this part of Cumbria with affordability. But there's actually an even bigger issue actually with housing mix. So what we're getting is there were targets for social housing, which were actually 35% in this area, but that loses out every single time now. I mean, there was an application only recently with 0 social housing on a big site in Kendal, which just seems outrageous. But frankly, housing developers up here are doing the social bit to an absolute minimum, and then everything else is open market. And open market up here starts at about £325,000, £350,000. So, if you're a young person trying to get on the ladder, which could be 150, 180 to 300, simply the houses are not being built. They do not exist. So that's the big thing is somehow changing the metrics so that we build in the mid-market.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, it's so important for young people to be able to get on that property ladder. And like you say, with house prices starting at such crazy high prices, it's just impossible. So I'm going to ask Nathan a question next. So how does the development of affordable housing differ in rural areas compared to urban ones? And is there a disadvantage in rural areas, and how do we overcome that?
I think there is. I mean, it's such a difficult conundrum, this one, it really is. But the first thing I jump to is scale, really. The scale of development typically, and I'm generalizing clearly because I have to in such short time, is the scale of developments tends to be smaller in rural areas than urban areas. I think in terms of the sort of, the Cumbria and Yorkshire, it's got a very difficult conundrum to answer, because on the one hand it wants quality, which is sort of underpins our business. We're called Urban Splash, so we are urban developers. So everyone wants quality. Everyone wants as much affordable housing as possible. The landowners want the highest land value they can get. In certain areas of Cumbria, like the Lakes, it's 100%, the policy is 100% affordable housing. And the reality of it is, dare I say it, and I'm glad I'm not in a room because people start throwing tomatoes at this point, is developers have to make profits to exist. Now, I'm not defending the example Mark just used, but what I'm saying is that there needs to attract private developers to do quality housing, something has to give. Not everybody can have everything, because the reality of it is the result of that is nothing. So, and I think there just needs to be sensible conversations. What is the most important thing in the area? Is the absolutely we've done a lot of affordable housing. Is that the most important thing? Is quality the most important thing? And it needs to be a very, very open and honest debate. That hopefully will result in the right thing. I think if developers are only interested in the bottom line and profit, then you should shoo them away from these areas. But there needs to be an understanding, sadly, that like any business, developers also need to make a profit. And I think that that shouldn't be embarrassed, or it shouldn't be something that people are embarrassed to admit. It's an important consideration in the conversation.
Absolutely, and it's great to start this conversation today, so thank you so much. And lovely, thank you so much for all your time. It's been really interesting, but I'm going to ask you to stay there while we bring back Lindsay and Carl for our first panel Q&A. And just a reminder, if you have got any questions that you'd like to ask our panel, just visit slido.com or purchase it from the App Store, and you can just use the hashtag GPLD Live, and that'll allow you to ask all your questions and I can pose them to our panel. But before we invite our panel back, we're going to see Anita and Katie from Quirkery, and they're going to tell us about their new venture.
Hello, my name is Katie Burks.
And I'm Anita Birch, and we're at Quirkery Co-working Space in Skipton.
So Quirkery is a quirky co-working space. It's the first co-working space in Skipton, and it's in a quirky old building, which is what we fell in love with.
So a co-working space is somewhere that lots of different people can come and work for either a few hours or a day or a month or even a year, and pitch up with their laptops or whatever they're working on and can rent a desk.
So there's all kinds of people working here, from creatives doing writing, arts, translation, through to we've got engineers, we've got
IT people.
Yeah. It's really exciting who's in the area and what they're doing and how they're managing to do it in a freelance, entrepreneurial way.
So I'm a freelance translator. I translate from French to English, scientific documents and that type of thing. And I worked from home for a good while. While my children were little, that was great because it was, it's flexible working. I could work when I wanted, where I wanted. But as the children all went to school, I started to feel increasingly isolated, really, of just being stuck at home. And so I set up a little networking group called Jelly. Met some people and we decided that we could actually share an office space. And then Katie came on board at that point, and we decided that perhaps there was an opportunity for actual, slightly more formal co-working space, a larger space in Skipton.
Yeah, so I'm a children's author. I write children's books under my maiden name, Katie Danes, and just met Anita fortuitously and was really excited to, like Anita, get out of the house. And then we started getting people saying, oh, have you got a spare desk? We'd like to join. And we really didn't. We were just like
full.
This sublet room above estate agents. So that's where the idea of maybe there's a demand and the need in Skipton for a larger space. One of the things we wanted to do was to add to the footfall in the town, and we've got some membership deals with local cafes. So people who work here can then get a discount. So we've got a coffee machine, but we kind of, that was our biggest decision, was not to go super fancy, because we wanted people to go and take their keep cup to Bean Loved or Steam Filter and get a takeout there and then come back here. And it's so great that people in their lunch break can literally pop to, I don't know, 10 different bakers in town.
Plenty of choice for lunch.
Now the market's up and running again. Sometimes people say, well, what's the difference between working, say, in a co-working space in Skipton versus if you went into Leeds and Manchester? And I mean, here we've got Skipton Woods, 5-minute walk away. We've got the moor you could hike up in a lunch break.
Which we have done.
We have
occasion.
done, yeah.
So we got in touch with the council when we had the idea of opening a co-working space, and then they made us aware of Great Place Lakes and Dales, because I think they realised that Skipton could really do with a space like this to support young people in the area, to try and help them to be able to stay and have somewhere.
One of the ideas for the funding was that Great Place would actually sponsor desks. So through that scheme for younger people who were sort of starting out in their own creative journey, they were then given a free desk space for a year, which was lovely for us because it introduced new people to the space, and but it was also beneficial for them.
Yeah, for them to have somewhere to work from, yeah.
Remote working is going to be a thing of the future, even more so after
I think
COVID.
now that people have proved that they can work remotely, you don't have to go into a big city to go to your desk. You can work remotely, but perhaps people won't want to work at home forever. So I think in the long term, people will enjoy working in spaces like this.
Great, that was such a brilliant video. Thank you so much, ladies. So, as you can see, I've been joined by all our panel members from the first half of today's session. So we've got lots of amazing questions coming in on Slido, so I'm going to put some of these to you now. So we've got a question that's come in from Richard, and he's asked, how can you incorporate local materials into development in rural areas cost effectively? So maybe I will ask Nathan.
We've not done many rural developments just yet, so I'm not entirely sure I'll answer that one particularly coherently, actually. But I mean, clearly, working with local suppliers is a really important facet of any developer, and you know, the council with any planning consent can insist that local suppliers are being used. I think that's an important consideration, as for things like apprenticeships, etc. So I think it's down to the negotiations between the planning authority, relevant planning authority, and the developer. I think that's the important part.
Great, absolutely
This
brilliant.
is something we're actually doing here. So we are we're stockpiling local materials. And the idea is actually to as part of our plans to build hundreds of houses in this region, to build up like a local supply chain, like a sawmill. And the way that we can do that economically is actually a lot of the housing and the housing materials and the structures may well be come from much further afield. Could be say a timber frame, everything like that. But actually to apply, for instance, something like an oak door or an oak porch on a house that actually gives it some of the local character, without breaking the bank. And if you actually look around at all local housing, vernacular housing for hundreds of years, it's very often the simplest and lowest cost of details that actually give it some uniqueness to the place. And I think there is definitely a lot of scope in this area. We've got stone, we've got timber to do more of that without breaking the bank.
Amazing, thank you so much. We've had a really great question in here. It says, younger people can tend to be reluctant or unsure of how to get involved in consultation around development. Does the panel have any tips on changing this?
Yeah, I think the key thing is probably to get involved earlier, and I think it's for local authorities, planning authorities in particular, to be active in it and not be sort of passive or do things half-hearted. And I think going as far, certainly with the new local plans, if it comes off, to look at core design of schemes in terms of what's actually suitable for young people, what meets their needs, and particularly their changing needs as their requirements change rapidly. So yes, I think there's an onus on there, and I think it goes beyond sort of the traditional or even sort of the social media type aspects. I think it is an active participation seeking from both sides.
Great.
Absolutely, David. Sorry, Natalie. Yeah, I agree. I agree with that. I think it's a type of consultation as well, and from our experience, we're about creativity, but that creative engagement and consultation, but consulting with young people in a way they need, and doing it in a more informal way. A lot of these reports and surveys and things that are hard. Yes, we can access them digitally, but some of them they take a lot of time. They're really hard to navigate for all of us. They're not. We need to make it more fun and really. When I talk about that, voices is actually having young people's input. So I'm being stereotypical here, but getting down to the local fish and chip shop, or going places and talking, face to face, digitally, whatever we can do, just mix it up a little bit.
That's
and Natty,
great.
can I just add one point on that? I think that
Please
again,
do.
It's for the local authority really, because what they've got to find out very, very quickly is what the developer in question's motives are. A lot of developers, sadly, and I wouldn't put us in this category, but I would say that, wouldn't I? But a lot of developers see consultation as a hassle, and they just want to get through it as quickly as possible. They use a PR company to do it, and they're not interested, and genuinely not interested. What we do, and I would say this, but we have to front it. And if a developer will not front it and be part of that consultation and meet people locally as part of their planning application and do it individually themselves, then you can sniff out straight away what their motives are in my eyes. So any developer that puts a PR company to do consultation, for me, should be red carded.
That's a really interesting point. Thank you so much. I've got another question here on Slido coming in, and it says, are co-working spaces better than working from your spare bedroom, your kitchen table, and everywhere else that we've all been working over the last year? And should we promote encouraging take-up of these co-working spaces? So I might ask Carl, if you can answer that one, please.
Yeah, definitely. Again, first-hand experience is whenever you're working at home, family members seem to think that you are just at home. So it'd be like, help with this, help with that. So it's like, geez, this is got to be considered from that point of view. I'm quite fortunate with my own office at home anyway. I've got space. But so often last year when we hit lockdown, some of my staff members, the designers, they were just working on the kitchen tables and stuff, and you could see the frustration coming from them. We have a lot of freelance support that do actually use co-working spaces, and it works really well. I think what we've missed and what we've lacked is the collaboration between us all, because being in a creative industry, you need to bounce ideas on people. It's almost nowadays you're typing, you're taking longer to do stuff because you are away from your colleagues. So again, yeah, I think it's essential to get back in the groove of collaboration, and we spur some of our greatest ideas collaborating.
That's amazing. Yeah, I'm sure we've all had those awkward moments on Zoom calls in the last year when the doorbell goes or your Sainsbury's shop comes in. Amazing. So I'm going to ask you all now, the big question of the day, and that is the future rural? So I'm going to ask if you can try and give me one sentence to sum it up, if you can. So Lindsay, let's go to you first.
Well, I sat on the fence a little bit before, didn't I? I said it could be, it should be, etc. Yes.
Amazing. Carl?
I'm biased, being a farmer's son, so yeah, 100% rural is the way to go. The cities are dead.
Wow, that's really putting you in great mouth. Let's go, Nathan.
Well, I hope the cities aren't dead, because that'll kill our business in a minute. But I think it's I think what my summation is people want a mix now going forward. Some people want to work from home. Even when the pandemic's gone, some people are going to want to work in offices in cities. Some people are going to want to work at home. And I think what the reality is, people want a mix of opportunities. So I think the idea of people working from areas like in Cumbria and Yorkshire, but travelling to cities on certain days is a really live one, actually. And whether that's suburbs and big cities as well. So I think the reality of it is going to be a mixed future. But the idea of going 9 to 5, getting in a traffic jam at 8 in the morning, driving into Manchester, Liverpool, or any of the big cities, I think is dead and silly, really, going forward. So yeah, I do agree with them on that side of things. So the traffic jam is dead, hopefully.
Yeah, I'm definitely not missing that one, that's for sure. So David, what do you think?
I think there's many shades of rural. I think when we set up the Great Place Lakes and Dales, we realised that Craven and South Lakes, being the southern parts of two national parks, look naturally towards Manchester, Leeds. And I think those better connected rural areas, I think, have got the opportunity to do really well and make the most of this. I think deeper into rural areas, I think it's another story altogether, and there's a lot more work to be done there.
Amazing. And finally, Mark, what do you think?
Well, I think we're already seeing. I think we're going to see a total shift in demand for people wanting to live in this area. Frankly, there's going to be too much demand, and we cannot trash some of our most precious environments. But what we do need to do, in this area of the Lake District that I'm in, we need a lot more young people. We need a lot better. We need more balanced communities, and I think that I think young people have been getting onto this quickly. Recognizing the benefits of living and working, locally, in a rural environment. I think it's shifted completely, and we need them to demand more of society and businesses, and us to think about how we provide for that. And I think there are cost-effective ways to do it. I think we actually have to challenge a huge amount of the way things are done. The way people work, the way they commute, where they work, frankly, the housing type, the housing quality. A lot needs to be done. And I think we can have them far better. I think it'd be incredibly exciting to live in a rural place and not just have all the parts in a city. We can have both.
Amazing. Well, there you go. We can have both. So our panel think the future definitely can be rural. Thank you so much to all our first guests for joining us this morning. So before we move on to our next guest, we have a short video that brings to life one of our guest projects delivered as part of Kendal Poetry Festival. Let's take a look. So there we go. I'd like to have a big welcome for our second panellist. It's poet Melissa, who you've just seen in the film, actor and filmmaker Clem, and Steph from Yorkshire Dales Guides. And I believe, Steph, that you've done 125k fell run this weekend, so you must be absolutely exhausted.
I'm pretty content, yes.
I bet you are. So you all participated in GPLD's Watch This Space project. So we would love to hear more about it. So I'm going to come to Clem and then Melissa first. So Clem, can you tell us a bit more about the programme? What is Watch This Space?
Yeah, definitely. So Watch This Space. So for me, Watch This Space is a way of seeing different spaces in a creative way. So, for example, the Yorkshire Dales Guides is a climbing wall space in Upper Settle, and it's an opportunity to use spaces which are not traditionally seen as creative spaces and creating something exciting, fresh and new in them.
That sounds absolutely amazing. Just what we need, I think. So, Melissa, how did you get involved in the programme?
So I've been involved in the programme twice now. I've done 2 different projects in 2 different spaces. And I mean, I saw it through a social media call out. Initially, that's kind of how I found out about Great Place Lakes and Dales. And I just, as a young creative in this area, I just thought that's such a fantastic opportunity to experiment and to kind of try an idea like within a supported framework and with the experience of Great Place Lakes and Dales behind me. So Absolutely. It went from there, really.
Great, brilliant. And I'll bring you in now, Steph, if that's all right. So spaces for younger people we know can be a real challenge in the Lakes and Dales. So do you think initiatives like this can help kind of open up spaces and benefit all young people?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, what I've witnessed at my space at Yorkshire Dales Guides, we've had quite a few different groups of creatives and young people who've come to work there, and it's been amazing watching, how it has benefited them, in so many ways with their work, with their businesses, physically and mentally, just spending time amongst nature and having that physical space to really just expand out into it in terms of their imagination. And I've seen lots of really great collaborations and ideas come out of it. And even for me, as somebody who's a business owner in a rural space, it's really helped my business. So when Clem came along and did some creative work at Yorkshire Dales Guides, she really inspired me. And it was like, well, why don't we use this space for circus and aerial work? And now, a year later, we have a collaboration happening between 2 groups of young people who actually work in more urban settings, but who now want to set up a circus school with us at Yorkshire Dales Guides. And this is going to be brilliant because it's going to generate inspiration, it's going to generate work, employment, and it's going to generate a means for young people who live in rural areas to kind of come and interact with that space. And it's going to be amazing. It's brilliant.
That sounds absolutely amazing. I trained in circus many years ago now in aerials, and when I came back up north it was really hard to find space to train because you kind of had to go to Manchester for it. So the fact that you're bringing that to this area I think is absolutely amazing. That's really, really exciting. So thank you so much, all of you, for joining me for our panel. You're going to come back a little bit later on and talk to us a little bit more, but for now, thank you so much. So we're going to move straight on to our next guests and carry on this conversation about public art. Now, remember, you can send in your questions on Slido. Just use the hashtag #GPLDLive to ask your questions. So I am delighted to welcome Laura from Francis Knight, who with her partner Louise produce Public Art Now for GPLD, and also local graphic designer and Fresh Perspective member Shan. Hello.
Hi.
Hi, thank you so much for joining us. So let's carry on this amazing conversation about public art. We'd love to hear everything that you've got to say. So let's start with Laura first of all. So how can public art create a sense of place for rural areas just like the Lakes and Dales?
Okay, I think firstly it's important to talk about what we mean when we say public art. So that's not always your large standalone sculpture welcome you into your town or village. We've heard lots of conversations today, and through the various conversations that we had when we were writing Public Art Now, here it is, that it's clear that public art's interpreted in a myriad of ways, and it can be permanent, temporary, functional, it can be an activity, it could be something that you may stumble across. And if it's done really well, then yes, it can create a sense of place anywhere. And yes, of course, that includes the rural. Our mantra when we're working with public art projects is we make places better by working with artists. So you need artists, you need creative people. They can shape, tease out the character and identity of what makes it home, what makes it local, what makes it rural. So it's important to work from the fabric of a location. Yes, the Lakes and Dales are beautiful. There's the magic reflected through the landscape, but there's also those communities that live there. Why do people live there? We need to respond to the local flavour, the feel of the history. So public art can help create connections. Artists can give voice to rural communities. People have talked today about community consultation. Artists are the best at listening and giving you alternative approaches to issues that affect rural communities. We don't want Anywheresville, do we? We don't want mediocrity that is no longer good enough for us. So I think through commissioning public art, working with artists, you can shape places, tease out the character and identity of what makes a place.
That was an amazing answer. Thanks so much, Laura. So I'm going to come to Sian for our next question. How do we encourage and enable local young artists to get involved with creating public art for the area?
So I'd begin with saying that the encouragement may not be necessary. I think a lot of people already have the enthusiasm for it and they're quite hungry for the opportunities. What may be holding young people back, however, is feeling like it's going to be a constant uphill battle from the get-go. So you want to, if you're looking to, get young people involved, you want to make sure that they're feeling valued. So you can do that by starting to look at what it is that they do, whether that be graphic design, whether that be statues, or whether that just be like large-scale murals. You want to take advantage of their skill set and embed that into the project rather than saying, this is what we can do for you. It's more what they can bring to the project. So it's really about making them feel valued and giving them some ownership over it. And lastly, just make sure that it's paid for. Like, no matter how good the job is, nobody wants to work for free.
Absolutely. Yeah, no, definitely no young artist working for free. Totally agree with that. So Laura, another question for you. Can campaigns such as Public Art Now really influence the growth of public art, and so it can benefit everyone?
So I think it's important to talk about why we use the word campaign. So we use that word campaign as it's like a call to arms. And like any good campaign, it's about the team behind it that drives it and that's proactive. So we wrote this guide, and I keep bringing it up wherever it is here. We wrote this guide to be accessible for both the two local authorities and the parks, to work together as a concerted effort to advocate for public art, to find common opportunities with the message that public art is for the benefit of everyone. Public Art Now proposes 9 projects designed with short, medium and long-term timescales. So there's things like demystifying what public art is, to influencing the planning process. And there's been lots of talk today about planning and how local authorities need to have some kind of mechanism to enable public art to happen, and also to involve young people and to make sure that they are involved in those conversations. So each project aims to place and keep public art higher on that agenda. And we also give examples of the benefits of public art. So based on the current thinking from Arts Council, the Design Council, for instance, and individual organisations. So we talk about public art as boosting the economy, especially the local economy, tourism, health, well-being, through to healthy placemaking. And we touch on these projects so that they can build opportunity and confidence for young people to get involved as well. It's really important that they get involved in those decisions, highlighting from an artist's point of view that accessible commissioning is also vital in making public art for everyone. So yes, public art is for everyone.
Amazing. Could not agree more. So thank you so much for that, ladies. I'm going to bring in now our other guests. So I'm going to bring back Melissa, Clem and Steph to join us for our final panel Q&A. And remember, you can put your questions to me through Slido, #GPLD Live. So we have got lots of questions coming in, which is absolutely brilliant. So do you think art and public art is important for the well-being of people in the area? Let's see, who would like to answer that one? Laura, maybe?
Yeah, I mean, I think, as I've mentioned, it is very much about the health and well-being of people. Public art, you know, as we've talked about, you know, it gets people involved, and it should be open and accessible. It's about making you feel good. It's about moments of joy. You know, public art's about joy and stumbling across things and being part of something and feeling that you're part of a community. And I think artists working in those areas do that. So yes, yeah, it's important.
Amazing. And Shan, I'll ask you to answer this one if that's okay. Do you think public art has a role in COVID recovery and our rural places?
100%. Yeah, I mean, in general, it just brings people together, and it allows for people to engage and interact with each other in new and interesting ways, whether that be from the actual design and creation process. So you've got collaboration, different people coming together and sharing ideas, or the aftermath. So if you've got some public art, it's a conversation starter. It's literally and directly bringing people into the same space, whether that just be for a photo op for friends to put on Instagram or whatever, or it can be more of an interactive design where you've got you know, your QR codes and you can make it digital. There's so many different things that you can do, and I think a huge thing that COVID's done is kind of discourage people from meeting and finding new ways to do so safely, and I think art's a really great way to do that. You can appreciate from a distance as well as up close.
Absolutely, that's a great answer. Thanks so much. So I've got a question here, and it says, I'd love to hear from Clem and Melissa about what they get from working in rural places and whether they have a dream space they'd like to work in. Wow, that's a great question. So let's, Clem, what do you think first?
What do I get from rural places? I get quite inspired by rural places, not necessarily in a traditional way. I think I look at them and see a lot of characters. So, you know, people that you come across as an actor and a writer. I have met some very individual, like, istic people, which I get a lot of comedy and pathos from, which I like to put in my work. And actually, thanks to Steph, one of my kind of bucket list places to film would be underground in a cave, because Steph took us in November 2019 when I first did Watch This Space. She took us on a trip underground, and it was just absolutely incredible, and just it just inspired me so much. And you know, you go horror, but you can do so many other things, and it just really opened my eyes to just a new place to work with on film, and how that would work in a place that is pitch black. So yeah,
that's amazing. That is absolutely amazing. What a different place to do a creative project in. And Melissa, what about you? Do you have a dream space that you'd love to work in?
Yes, I absolutely do, and I'm actually trying to make it happen at the minute. So my dream space would be a snowy fellside, to be projecting poetry onto the snow. And through the Watch This Space project that I did, I'm actually working with Kendal Poetry Festival, and we're trying our absolute hardest to make it happen. But it's working with other people outside and kind of like drawing on the immediate feeling of being in the fells to write.
That's beautiful.
That's my dream.
That's amazing. That sounds beautiful. If you ever do that, please let me know so I can come and watch. So I've got one here. Does the panel feel that Watch This Space will provide a platform for young creatives to go into or create new performance spaces in the area? Steph, do you want to answer that one?
Yeah, I mean, I'll go back actually. I'll kind of bring that back to, Clem's example of caving. I mean, I think it will, and I think what it might actually do is maybe not so much new, but bring us back to the roots of things. Because I think we think of caves, for example, as this really foreign, different place, but actually caves are the birthplace of art, because when we think about the first place that we've seen art expressed, it's hands on the wall, in like a cave. And so I think actually going forward, especially with climate change, and bringing artists and creative people who are such amazing communicators back into these rural spaces, giving them a means to reconnect with nature again actually will probably be a brilliant way to bring everybody's awareness and getting them thinking a bit differently about how we're going to move forward in a new world with all these new challenges. So yeah, I think it's going to be new and old and everything else in between.
Absolutely amazing. So I'm going to ask the big question of the day now. Is the future rural? So see if you can give me one sentence. Is the future rural? Let's go around and see. Sian, let's go to you first.
Well, my immediate thought is yes, because who doesn't want to go from working on screens all day to walking 5 steps out the door and meeting with a cow? I mean, it's great, isn't it?
Yeah, it absolutely is. Laura, what do you think?
I think it's about choice. So I think yes, it is rural, but I think also it's local, and it's your local could be urban. For me, it's urban, but yes, I do love the rural. So yes, I think it's about choice.
Amazing, Melissa.
So I agree with that. I don't know if it is or not, but I think the fact that we're having the conversation shows the progress that's been had. I think there's a thirst for voices and for creatives who have kind of the human and the natural connection that's sort of everyday life in rural areas.
Great. Clem?
Oh, I'm really stressed about this question. I think that I'm sorry, I'm not gonna be black and white, but I think I would like it to be rural, but I really like what Laura said about it being local. But I think there needs to be a lot more awareness about what's happening in cities for people to kind of like go there. Like for me, just personally, in theatre and film, having more kind of up-to-date theatre and up-to-date conversations around what's happening in bigger places like Manchester and London, and really thinking whether we are catering to those to that want for those kind of new things and bringing them within our rural spaces.
Amazing, thank you. And finally, Steph, what do you think?
The first thing that comes to my mind is that art is beauty, and rural spaces are full of nature. And so, yeah, beauty, absolutely.
100%. Well, thank you so much to our final panel. That was absolutely amazing. Such a good conversation. So thank you so much for joining us. Okay then, so all that leaves me to say is thank you to all our amazing guests for joining us today. I'm sure you'll agree there were some amazing insights, and we're going to look forward to welcoming you again at the same time tomorrow for our next GPLD live session that'll be hosted by Simon. So don't forget, our film nights are happening tonight. We've got Clips of Creativity at 8 p.m. and Meet the Makers at the same time tomorrow. There's still lots of spaces available, so if you want to sign up, you can do that before 5 p.m. tonight. And there is some really amazing creative talent on there, so I really encourage you to sit back on your sofa and just enjoy that this evening. So I'm Natalie Morell. Thank you so much for joining us for GPLD's first episode of Live, and have a great day.